Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 7 and 7 show with Zach Ellison. Today, I have with me Anthony Scaramucci, the man, the myth, the legend, the founder and managing partner of SkyBridge. And Anthony, great having you here today. Thanks for joining.
Well, it's good to be on. I'm showing you my lifelong suffering today, Zach. I've got my my Met shirt on. I'm heading over to the Met game later. So, if you like pain, you can join me and become a Met fan, which has been a 50-year source of pain for me.
Well, I was a Red Sox fan growing up, and so we had decades and decades of pain until...
You guys traded it out recently. I mean, you've won more World Series in the 21st century than the Yankees. So it's pretty cool.
See, people forget that the Patriots and Red Sox actually struggled mightily
for
many years, and so we went through pain and then we kind of earned
there you go.
That team later.
Oh, there you go. Well, good stuff.
Maybe that's up for...
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's great having you. And, I think the Mets eventually will be winners, so fear not. So just so everybody who's listening knows more about your background, tell us about how you got here, and then we can talk about what you're working on now.
Well, I mean, my 30-second background, I grew up out here on Long Island. I went to a public high school, then on to Tufts University and Harvard Law School. I started my career on Wall Street at Goldman Sachs. I spent 7 years there. I left in 96 to build a registered investment advisor. That was quite successful. We ended up selling that business to Neuberger Berman in 2001. And then Neuberger got bought by Lehman Brothers. People have a tendency to forget that, but I worked at Lehman for about 2.5 years, went to see Dick Fold and told him I wanted to start another company. He frankly helped me do that. And in 2005, I left and started SkyBridge. And so SkyBridge is a couple of $1 billion under management. It's a fund-of-funds platform. We do some venture investing. We do some crypto investing. And we also have our SALT conference, which is the Thought Leadership Conference that we do 4 times a year around the world, which would include New York, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Abu Dhabi. So it's been a fun business. I have my own podcast called Open Book, and people like authors. I like reading. I interview one author a week, which is a lot of fun for me. I do some public speaking. Some people will remember me from my ill-fated stint in Donald Trump's White House, which is 6 short years ago. I spent 11 days in Trump's White House. I got summarily fired after frankly an argument with him, which was fine. And but I stayed close friends with General Kelly and H.R. McMaster and those guys. And here we are today, 6 years later. Very, very happy to be at SkyBridge, working again, and and it's great to spend time with you. And obviously, you and I have some things in common as it relates to venture debt investing, which I think you have a super exciting business there. And you're going to have this big opportunity now to fill the void of a result of some of the banking collapses that are tied to that industry. And so, you like you, Zach, I'm always looking for new opportunities and fun things to work on. Boring, I don't like, And now sometimes in investing, you have to go with boring, but I like entertainment and I like fun in most parts of my life.
So you're somebody that's always working on many, many things at one time, and I feel like you're always kind of on the cutting edge of what's interesting and relevant and profitable, quite frankly. What are you working on now, and what's top of mind for you?
Well, I'm working on a couple of things right at this moment. I'm going to have a SALT conference that we're going to do in Hong Kong. That's going to be a huge event for us. We're trying to reinvigorate the relationship that we formerly had with China. And so I'm spending some time in the fall in both Singapore and Hong Kong. I'm working on a artificial intelligence ETF, which I hope to launch in October. Some of these AI ETFs, frankly, have not done well because they're a little bit too diversified. And so we're working on one that's more concentrated. I have a crypto ETF. Now, of course, it's not the underlying currencies because we don't have ETFs for those yet, but we do have a basket of publicly traded securities that are tied to the digital property, digital asset space. And that's done very well this year. Got schmeisted last year, I might add, but it's up over 150% this year, and so doing quite well there. I've got this small fund, not overly allowed to talk about it because it's for accredited investors, but it's basically a unicorn recovery fund. We closed that already, so I guess it's okay to talk about it because we're not accepting new money at this time. But those are some of the fun things that I'm working on. I'm also about to publish my 7th book. And the title of that book, the working title right now, looks like it will be the title, is From Wall Street to the White House and Back, Scaramucci's Guide to Unbreakable Resilience. And so, I'm in there blasting away.
You're probably going to get the last laugh.
Who the hell knows, right? But at least, you got to cremate me, because if I'm just in the coffin, I'm going to really try to pull myself out of the coffin. So if you want me off the field, you got to cremate me.
So with all those books behind you, how much reading do you do?
So it's interesting. So I am buying books to the tune, and those boxes behind me as well are books that I'm giving away to the local library. But I buy books probably 6-1 in terms of the my capability to read them. But I'm a big reader. I'm not going to exaggerate. If I can get through 3 books a month, which is a total of 36 a year, I'm talking about fully reading the book, that's a home run for me. Sometimes, some years I do a little less, some years I do a little more. I've been doing a lot of traveling this year, and so I'm a big book tape, audio tape sort of a person. So I've gotten through about 18 or 19 books thus far this year, so I'm pacing quite well to get that done.
Any favorite books on the investment side that you've read at any time?
Well, I love The Psychology of Money. I don't know if you've read Morgan Hassel's new book. It's actually not that new anymore. It's probably 18 months old. I tell people when I go speak at a college, you should read Lawrence Cunningham, the essays that Warren Buffett has produced, which are basically his annual reports condensed by Professor Cunningham from Columbia. I still love, it's a classic, 35 years old now, but it's called One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch. I think that's a very interesting book, loaded with a lot of enthusiasm in terms of how to think about investing. But those are classic books to me. And I'm going to tell you something that's really corny and somewhat esoterica, but I think it's worth reading. And I gave it to all my children, is Napoleon Hill wrote a book in the 1930s called Think and Grow Rich. And in that book, there's a mindset, there's an idea about how you become successful and how you become financially independent. And it's about delaying gratification, and it's about paying yourself first. There's another really small book I hand out to everybody called The Richest Man in Babylon. I don't know if you ever heard of the book, but it's written by George Clason.
I've read both of those books you mentioned.
Yeah, somebody knocked that book off and called it The Wealthy Barber back in the 1990s. It was the same book. And what is the idea? Why is the man the richest man in Babylon? Well, he's able to pay himself first. He lives below his means. And if you have a cable bill, well, then you should have a personal bill. You should have a Zack or an Anthony bill. And in that you pay yourself first. And so every month for the last 30 years, I write a check to myself into my funds, into my family's trust, and into the assets that my family holds. And so you do that for 30 years, you do that long enough, Zach, and you do it in high quality things that you don't think about, it's worthwhile. And I want to tell this story because I think this is elemental to our emotions getting tied to our money. I forgot a account. I don't know what happened, but I had an account at Goldman Sachs, and I bought for my children 100 shares of Microsoft in 1991. And so that 100 shares of Microsoft is now 17-1 on the investment, 30 years later. And I found the account the other day, and I'm looking you straight in the face and telling you I would have sold those shares during the Steve Ballmer years as the company was languishing. But I didn't sell them because I didn't know I had them. And so there they are, and now the company is flourishing. And yes, you can get a situation where you're buying it to something like AIG, it goes bankrupt, or a GE, which you think is a storied company, and goes bankrupt. But generally, when you're buying quality and you sit on quality for very long periods of time, you do quite well. So that's the big lessons for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just hit on two of the most important lessons in investing. One is the power of compounding.
Yep.
And the other is being a long-term investor and being in the market consistently and not over trading and letting behavioral aspects lead you to bad decisions, selling when you're scared and buying when you're overly exuberant. So that's a great segue into the next question, which is, what are the other key investment principles that you live by that you think others should as well?
Well, I know this sounds nuts, but think like a dead person. Okay. And what do I mean by that? If you look at Charles Schwab's accounts, and you can find this on Google, the best performing accounts at Charles Schwab are the dead people. Why? Well, the dead people don't look at the accounts. They don't focus on it. And so we have a tendency very tied to our emotions. If you were a seller in 2022 of growth, maybe you did okay, but look at where growth is now. If you sold your Facebook stock down 65% and said, okay, I'm done with Mark Zuckerberg, he's up 150% this year. And so I would prefer people to just think about holding high quality. I like to tease my clients. I tell them, everybody's a long-term investor until they have short-term losses. The minute they have short-term losses, they snap a match to their hair, or they run around in a circle and start yelling at everybody. But it just doesn't work that way. There's no free lunch on Wall Street. There's no perfect scenario. It's only your golf partner who you're playing golf with on the weekends that has a perfect portfolio. He's the one that's going to be whispering in your ear that he bought Uber before it went public, or he owns SpaceX, and he's a guru and a genius. But the rest of us are fallible, and the rest of us make mistakes in our portfolio. But I'll tell you where you don't make a mistake is in duration. The longer you can hold your assets, if they're high quality assets, the better you're going to do. And that's the recipe to my success. I'm not the richest person on Wall Street by any means. I've taken a lot of risk in my career, so I've had some oscillations, but I haven't taken any risk in my personal investment discipline. And when I say not taking any risk, of course, I'm in the stock market, so therefore I have risk, but I'm just explaining, if you put money to work for 30 years in the stock market, you don't have risk, because you will be betting on mankind or womankind. You'll be betting on long-term growth and innovation. And again, not to tie it all back to your business, but, you have a phenomenal footprint because you are investing in growth, early stage ideas. I mean, it could be late stage venture or intermediate stage venture, but this is the stuff that people are going to be looking at in 15 years. This is the stuff that's going to be in the top 5 or 10 of the Dow 30 in 15 years. And you're looking at it from a debt structure where you can get pretty high coupons because they're emerging companies. You have probably some preferreds in there for yourself, for your LPs, where they can potentially get a little bit of an equity kicker. I mean, all of those things should be in somebody's investment portfolio. People have to think with a pizza pie chart. I'm not just going to own one thing. I'm going to own a collection of things, and I'm going to be patient and sit tight.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I think about innovation as the asset class right now, and a lot of people don't think of innovation as an asset class. But if you think of where you're going to make money in the long term, it's got to be through innovative companies, because innovation is what's driving value creation. And ultimately, where you choose to play depends on your risk sentiment and also many other factors. It could be later stage large cap tech like Meta or other companies like that, or it could be early stage venture equity. And venture debt's kind of right in the middle, in the sense that we are investing in the best VC backed companies, but we're doing it through a structure that's a lot safer than equity, because we're senior secured and we're earning a mid-teens coupon every year. But then we've also got equity participation in all the deals. So the way I think about it is, innovation is the asset class that I love. Like, I think almost all value creation is coming from that. And so how do I want to play it? And I think what you just said about being diversified makes a lot of sense. You want to have exposure to all of those different types of innovative assets. Are there any that you like particularly right now in the innovation space?
Well, listen, I mean, I've made most of my investments in fintech, and so I own Chime, the neobank. I own Plaid. I own some of the crypto exchanges like Kraken on the private side. I own some Bitcoin miners. Did very poorly last year, doing well this year. But where I want to go is in AI. Where I want to go is in some of the things that you're looking at. And I think what's extraordinary about what's going on right now, because of the Silicon Valley Bank situation or the First Republic situation, you're going to see opportunity. You're going to see opportunity where you're going to have more people to lend to. You're going to see opportunity where people like me or you can enter that space more easily because you just have less participants, you have less players. So I like all of that. But yeah, listen, I mean, you're in the right space, and I love the way you're doing it because you have a defensive position in terms of where you are in the capital stack. And so you're going to get that high coupon return, but then you've also got potential equity upside. And so to me, I like the way you think about it. And I think we went through a very wickedly bad market, bear market, and I think we're on the other side of it now. So people that are looking at this stuff right now, I was with somebody literally in Silicon Valley last Friday. I was down on Sand Hill Road. I was talking to a group of guys, and there is a burning ember smell in the room. People have been blown up and blown out, and they're exhausted. And I said to a couple of young guys, they were in their late 30s, I said, this is very reminiscent to me visiting Silicon Valley in 1999 into the 01 period, because after the NASDAQ crisis and debacle, 23 short years ago for me, but a lot of 30-year-olds don't remember it. People were blown out and they were feeling pretty terrible. But then if you stepped back and looked at the macro, it was 25 years of the best investing in the history of the world. Okay, think about if you had just held your Amazon, or think about it if you bought early into Facebook before it went public, or 2000, Google wasn't even public. It went public, Zach, Google went public in August of 04, and the stock traded sideways for a while. Let's think about that. Think about what Google became, and so you're sitting on the future Googles, you're sitting on the future Facebooks, and I want to be a part of that, and I'm excited about it.
So you've seen many cycles over your career. What are some of the lessons you've learned, either mistakes that others have made or maybe even mistakes you've made that you've taken with you to learn from?
Well, listen, I've made so many mistakes, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, I would say, well, this doesn't reflect well on me, but this is, nakedly honest. I would say overconfidence. Anywhere where I've been in a situation where I have been overconfident, I have literally gotten schmeisted or hit by a UPS truck, So I would say that was true in the Trump administration. That was the wrong job for me. I probably shouldn't have taken that job, but I took that job for ego reasons. I took it for pride reasons. And so, and it didn't work out well for me. I would say that I would caution investors, whether it's their career decisions, even their personal relationship decisions, or investing, take your pride, take your ego out of the decision making. You'll make way better decisions. I had a buddy of mine that walked away from being the Secretary of the Army. He had spent time with Donald Trump. Again, I'm not trying to make this about the president, but he spent time with Donald Trump, and he made a decision that his personality wasn't going to gel well with Mr. Trump. And so even though he had the appointment, he recused himself, stepped away from the appointment. That was clear thinking, and that was objective thinking. And I would tell you, I've been too big in certain positions that have gone to zero on me. I have bought into a home health care company that I thought was going to be the Home Depot of home health care. Okay, so the population is aging and blah, blah, blah. And it turned out that people, for whatever reason, are comfortable at Home Depot, and they're comfortable there versus their local hardware store. But it turned out that when it relates to home health care, they're more comfortable with the mom and pop place in their local area. Because I guess it's sensitive, stuff, patient related, sort of like going to a doctor-patient relationship versus a factory-like healthcare response. I got destroyed in that. I lost all my money in that. I mean, I could tell you, when I say I lost all my money, my investment went to zero. I can tell you one mistake after the next, but they're typically born from overconfidence. I would tell people, when you're thinking about making a private equity investment, think small. But also, instead of making that investment, why not put the money just in Berkshire Hathaway? I bet you would do better. Okay, you'd have less zeros in your portfolio. Now, listen, I have done well too. I bought into a couple of spirits companies that have done very well. I bought into a tequila company, a rum company. They've done very well. But I've also, I've had my sets of zeros as well. So patience, lack of ego, those are the things that will help you in your life.
So this idea of overconfidence is one that I think about a lot. And actually, I'm getting a doctorate degree at the University of Florida in business right now. And I'm a little more than halfway through. And one of the themes we talk about quite a bit is this theme of overconfidence in investing and how generally it's a bad thing. But when I think about the startup system, you have to be overconfident and a little bit crazy to start a new company. You have to literally be overconfident, because if you look at the numbers and play the percentages, no new companies would ever be born because most fail, right? And even those that are successful aren't very successful in most cases. And so I always, have this, this little battle in my head, essentially, of, what's the right level? Because you have to be incredibly confident in yourself.
That's true.
And you have to bet on yourself like you have and I have. But you also have to, kind of rein in that overconfidence, because we can't be the best at everything. And we, there's going to be mistakes that we make. And so that's, just something I think about a lot, because I'm talking to founders, every day of the week, essentially. And I want to see confidence in them, but I don't want to see hubris. And so I think there's a fine line between, overconfidence and the right level of confidence.
No question. We agree. I think that's 100% correct. But listen, here's the beauty of everything that we're talking about. You can make mistakes. That's the greatest thing. You don't have to be in a straight 45-degree angle. Everything's perfect about your portfolio. I think there's only one person that I know that had that, and he went to jail for 150 years. That was Bernard Madoff. He was telling people he had this perfect system. They bought into it. And listen, I didn't know him, so I'm not one of these history revisers where I say, oh, I knew the guy was a fraud. I didn't know he was a fraud. I'm just saying, when you have this 45-degree straight line angle like this, without any imperfection in it, it's probably something you want to avoid. The flip side, though, is embrace the mistakes. You asked me a really good question. What did I learn from these mistakes? Well, be humble. Don't be overconfident. Recognize that there are so many things out of your control. I not to get morbid, but I lost a very dear friend this year to brain cancer. And he was a 58-year-old young, vigorous guy. There's no control. There's so many things about your life, so many variables in your life that you can't control, that being one of them. Certainly, he didn't want to have brain cancer, and he didn't want to pass so quickly at such an early age. But, if you recognize that there's these things in your life that you can't control, you'll get more comfortable when things are not going your way.
100% agree. And that's one lesson I've learned the hard way. There's so many factors that are going to go against you that you might not foresee and that you can't control. But my takeaway from a lot of this is that people should bet on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing I've done right in my career, it's been on myself. And when I haven't done that, that's typically when I've been wrong.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I'm always right, but it's, you got to
yeah. It also, let me tell you this, and I think you know this, when you are betting on yourself, it's exhilarating. So I would rather bet on myself and fail and have the experience of betting on myself than not bet on myself. In other words, the fear-based life is a life less lived. I'd rather take the ride, the ups and downs. People, I've had some very public failures. I got fired from the White House. I got torched by Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. And so people forget my successes because I'm a public figure and the media wants to write about the car crashes or a bad year at SkyBridge or whatever it might be. But I look at those things and say, hey, I am so thrilled that I stuck my neck out. I don't want to be that guy. I remember, it's probably not totally appropriate for your podcast, but I'm going to share it anyway. I was at a cocktail party. I was a vulnerable 32-year-old. I had just left Goldman Sachs and left a big job with big income to do something on my own. And I'm sitting there at the cocktail party, and there's a Goldman Sachs guy there, and he looked over at his wife. He goes, I'm not like Anthony. I haven't failed at anything. And I thought to myself, wow, I mean, it was a dig on me. There was an expression of his insecurity. But then I was thinking about it. I was like, well, it made me feel bad for a moment. And then after the moment passed, I was like, well, wait a minute. I want to fail at things. I want to push myself into things. I've written books. I've developed the Thought Leadership Conference. I have an asset management business. I've got a relationship database of over 100,000 people. I've given public speeches. I've had ups and downs, twists and turns. I've flown on Air Force One. I've worked in the White House. I've given a White House press conference. I've been on reality television, whether it was celebrity special forces jumping out of helicopters or in the Big Brother home for 10 or 12 days. My point is that, why not fail and get all of the positives of the risk-taking than sit there and say, well, geez, I can't make a mistake. I can't do anything that's risk-oriented. Otherwise, I could look foolish or embarrass myself. I think those are big lessons, Zach, for people.
That might be the biggest lesson, and that goes back to the book you mentioned by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, right? It's really about thinking positively, right? And but not being afraid to embrace challenge and adversity. And I think about what causes growth. It's not when everything's easy. Think about any area of your life, whether it's writing a difficult paper in college or getting stronger in the gym or closing a big deal. These are things that we oftentimes fail at first, and then we have to fight through them. And that's the process that causes growth. It's the challenge, adversity.
Well, we agree 100%. I totally agree with that.
So turning the tables, we've got a little less than 10 minutes left. I wanted to talk to you about alternative investments. This is an area that you're an expert in. I would love to understand, for our listeners mainly, how alternative investments are beneficial to portfolios, and ultimately how investors should try to access some of these alternative investments.
Well, again, in the context of a broad portfolio, I think you have to have money in venture debt, some hedge fund exposure. I think you have to have a small piece in speculative assets because what we have found over time that enriches the portfolio. You may remember the book Pioneering Portfolio Management. Okay, when David wrote that book, it's 25 years ago now. He was pushing venture capital, private equity. He was pushing, and of course, this was David Swensen, the CIO from Yale, who's no longer with us. But he had this brilliant thought that longer-term duration, longer-term assets would yield higher results, create more alpha. And so I tell people that are wealthy, or even people that are aspiring to be wealthy, have some stocks, have some bonds, more stocks and bonds, frankly, because you want to be on the growth side of things. But then own some of these other assets. Have a toehold in your fund or my fund, because you want some of the brightest minds in the world, which you're going to get in the world of private equity or venture debt financing, or hedge fund management. You're going to get some of the brightest minds in the world, and you'll be able to avail yourself to those, So I don't know. That's my thought. I mean, to me, when I started SkyBridge, the idea was, okay, there's a dentist in Davenport, Iowa. He's got a financial consultant. They're giving him a stock and bond portfolio. He can't get access to Steve Cohen or to Dan Loeb or Paul Singer at Elliott. But what if I create a vehicle for him where there's a $25,000, $50,000 minimum? Let's say that person has $1 million of net worth. They want to put 5% of their money in hedge funds, which we think is a good idea. Now they get access to some of the greatest hedge fund managers in the world. They can do it through my pass-through vehicle. We'll do all the quantitative and qualitative risk analysis for them. We'll be their outsourced chief investment officer for their hedge fund portfolio at a very modest fee to do that. And it's worked out well. We have over 6,000 clients in that business. It's worked out quite well.
I really like your SALT conferences as well, because they bring together some of the best fund managers with the best allocators. So I've really enjoyed going to those, and I think they create a lot of value and a lot of learning opportunities and networking opportunities.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's the goal of it. I was in to exactly where I was. I was in Minneapolis, and I was on the conveyor belt there to go through the security line at the airport, and somebody tapped me on the back, and I turned around. I said, "Anthony." I said, "Yes. Just want to introduce myself, and I just want to let you know that I attended your 2011 SALT conference in Las Vegas, and I met two people who helped me get this fund started 10, 11 years ago. I started with $30 million under management. I have $500 million now, and those guys have become great investors of mine, and without the SALT conference, I wouldn't have met them." And I got to tell you, it was like a phenomenal, I didn't get paid for that or anything like that, but that was the goal. And I'm not looking to get paid. It's a non-linear transfer of goodwill among people. And I was thrilled, and I said, "Hey man, this is a great story. I'll be telling this story someday on Zach's podcast." It's just, that's the kind of karma that you want to create in the world, and I want people to win. I am a big believer in people winning, and I'm a big believer in collaborating. And I tell my kids, I can only give you two gifts. Forget about the money, whatever is left over after I'm long dead. That's not really going to be that helpful to you, believe it or not, because you're either going to be happy or not happy. The money's not going to matter as much as people think. But what will make you happy is celebrating the successes of your friends. And what will make you happy is do the thing that you really want to do in life. You have to do that, because if you do that, you're going to never work a day in your life. And I tell my kids, just go do that. What does Mel Brooks say, Zach? Relax. None of us are getting out of here alive. Hey, what a great line about life, right?
So true. And, the point you made about growth not being linear, and you made that in the context of investing, but also just in life. I think about that all the time. People, tend to quit when things get difficult, or they, sell their investments when they're down. And I think one of the lessons I've learned is, just stick it out. And it really is darkest before dawn. Every time where I felt like I'm kind of at a dark point, something happens that totally, changes that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's that ability to be persistent and resilient that, to me, also is what makes great founders, because every single company is going to go through challenges, especially early stage companies, and most will throw in the towel. And those that don't are going to be the winners. And I'm always betting on them the same way you are. I love to see people be successful. I'm not a hater. There's a lot of haters out there, and they look at what others are doing, and they're like, "Yeah, I could do that." They try to cut.
What kind of energy is that? there are a couple of negative energy sources that have no value. Number one is to be a hater. I don't have the time for that. Number two is to be a victim or to be a person filled with regret. On my podcast a month or so ago, I had Robert Greene on, the 48 Laws of Power, his best-selling author, and he said something to me which I totally rang my bell. He was like, "Hey, you can't have regrets." What kind of sentiment is that? Okay, I made a mistake in my life. I got married and divorced, or I failed at an investment, or I failed at a business venture. Who cares? Don't spend any time or energy on that. Focus on today and focus on the future. People are like, well, you got fired from the White House. Yes, I did. I don't wake up in the morning and kick myself in the pants and say, geez, I did 5 or 6 stupid things, got my ass fired from the White House. I take the millstone of regret and victimization, take it off my neck and put it beside me, and I go forward to enjoy my life. I think it's a big message for people. They have to think like that. They'll just be so much happier. And, these are precious times for us, and times are getting better, by the way. Despite what the news is reporting and all this sort of stuff, we're getting better. We just developed a paint that we can put on the rooftops of all these buildings now, and it will absorb the sunlight as opposed to overly reflect it back into the atmosphere, and it'll help stabilize the Earth's temperature. Okay, well, that's cool. More stuff like that's going to happen. There's more stuff coming out with the mRNA technology that could potentially help us with our immune system related to cancers and different things that are going on. We may be able to extend our lives a little bit. That's going to happen. You've got an age of abundance that we're about to come upon. Why not embrace it? Why not enjoy it? Don't sit there focused on every negative thing that's happening. I mean, yes, we rubberneck. We like looking at car crashes. As we drive by the cars, we stare at those, okay? And good news doesn't make the paper. I'm probably having the best year of my career this year after having a disastrous year last year. Well, I had a really bad year last year. It was incredibly well documented. I think there was one woman from Bloomberg. I mean, I must have dated her in a past life or something like that. She wrote a series of negative articles about me, and she was firing out a negative article once a month, and then she had a big crescendo, I'm the most terrible person on the planet article. And I read the article, I laughed, and then here's the thing, okay? She wanted to come to the SALT conference. She's a journalist at Bloomberg. And my staff was all upset with her, and they weren't going to allow her registration. I said, what are you, crazy? Let her come. I don't care. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in free speech. I'm a public figure. She can write whatever the hell she wants. But I think if you are that small-minded, you're not going to let her come to the conference. Let her come. I don't care. But here's the thing. I'm having a phenomenal year this year. No one's going to write that, and that's fine. You gotta accept those are the laws of our civilization now. That's how things work. And you can't be self-flagellating or feel any victimization, or they just you roll with it. You can't be a baby, I guess is the point I'm making.
And you also just showed in real life that it's darkest before dawn. You had a rough year last year, and now you're killing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And just one quick thought is maybe that reporter, who I don't know, didn't like you because you didn't date her in a past life.
I don't know. I'm sure if I dated her, she would have been really pissed, more pissed. Anyway.
So parting thoughts, anything you want to leave us with about what you're going to be doing next and what we should be thinking about?
Well, I got my book coming out in October, which I'm excited about. We're going to be doing these conferences that I mentioned. I'm hoping to make an acquisition, at some point, a bolt-on acquisition of SkyBridge, which hopefully by the end of the year I can make an announcement about. And so, I'm excited. I'm excited about the future. And, one thing Buffett said, which I totally agree with, you get better as you get older in this game. Because I think you get more patient, you get wiser, you're more humbled, you're more psychologically minded. And so if the good Lord keeps me on the planet and I stay healthy, I'm looking forward. I think the best years for SkyBridge are ahead of us. And I'm looking forward to that as well.
I agree with that point. I feel like the more gray hairs I get in my beard, the better my performance is in my investment portfolio. It's almost a direct correlation of 1-to-1.
100%. I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
Well, Anthony, thanks so much for coming on today. I feel like I always get something from you. And last thought is, what's the best way for people to follow you or keep up on what you're doing?
Well, you can go to my podcast, Open Book, anywhere where you get podcasts, the Spotify, Apple Podcasts. But you can also follow me on Twitter at Scaramucci or Instagram at Scaramucci. I'm not on Threads yet. Probably I'm too loyal to Elon Musk. I probably won't go on Threads, but those are the places you can find me.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for coming on, and thanks everybody for listening to the 7 and 7 show with Zach Ellison and Anthony Scaramucci.
Great to be here.